Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where we have like 3,000 science right now. We should probably spend some of that. And what do we want to spend it on? Well, we have a contract on Duna, a viewer contract, that would require that we have all of the science equipment. I would not include the narrowband scanner on that, but that likely would want... I mean, we have a couple of reasons to want xenon propulsion. This is very expensive. What else do we need for actual science tech? Mech chip features rendezvous and docking. Okay. The remote guidance unit would be nice to have, for sure. Is there anything else up here that we really, really need? I mean, the RA100 relay antenna would be great. RTGs? No, I think that we pretty much have everything that we want science-wise. So in that case, I'm going to grab the remote guidance units. And these cost 1,000 up this way. Okay. We're not going to go for these large probes, I don't think. So that's fine for now. We can grab ion propulsion. I'm not sure we're going to use it on our Duna mission. We might for our communication satellites that are part of the contract, and we'll go over what this contract is in a moment here. But I think the RA100 makes a lot of sense to take. Beyond that, we could go for some of these engines. I don't think they're strictly speaking necessary for what we're going to be doing here. Larger Clampatron docking ports, it's all kind of whatever. Experimental aeronautics, yeah. I think for now, what we're going to do is we're just going to grab specialized electrics to get that 4K rechargeable battery bank. And then beyond that, we have enough to grab like one thing, and we'll take very heavy rocketry. Not that I think we'll use that for right now. But let's hop into the VAB and let's talk about the requirements for this contract, which are pretty extensive. Okay, so let me pull up here. Let me just pull up real quick the actual contract. Okay, so this is Snakebee Life's Duna Outpost contract. And I'm going to call this a hard contract, so this will get us 1 million to get this done. So that'll be fine, and SpaceMax's Melon Kerbal wants to return home to Duna, and requires the infrastructure to be readied immediately. Kelgan Kerman, Corin Kerman, and Theobart Kerman have all volunteered, but they're all in disguise as different Kerbals. We'll get to that in a moment. We must deploy enough comsats around Duna and Ike to ensure continuous communication with Kerbin. Now, we're probably largely going to have that already. We have a bunch of comsats up in not exactly that direction, but there should be a lot of potential communications there, as is. But we're going to send a couple of comsats with this because of the bonus down here. We'll get that to we'll get to that in a moment. You must land and collect a sample, deploy a flag, and deploy science experiments, creating an unkerbaled outpost on Ike. So that's going to be an unmanned outpost. Data from Ike should be transmitted to a Kerbaled science lab on the surface of Duna for processing. Now, the game doesn't actually allow this, so the way I'm going to interpret this is that we should take the Ike data that we collect in the initial landing to Duna, and we'll process it there. The Duna outpost should have a full deployment of science equipment, and data should be able to be transmitted back to Kerbin regularly, which we'll easily be able to do. The volunteers do not need to return to Kerbal, nor do they need to know that this is a one-way trip. Give ourselves a bonus for doing it in a single launch, and I will. And we're going to make that be... what, like a 30% bonus? So this would be like 1,300,000 or something? That seems fair enough. So let's hop on back to the game here, and we'll get started designing this. Now, I'm going to do this with 2 communication satellites. We'll have one in an equatorial orbit, maximal, around the Duna system, and then one in a polar orbit. That'll give us pretty regular communication, maybe not absolutely constant, but good enough. We can definitely use some of these remote guidance units for that, but I'm going to start with the construction of the Duna portion of the lander here. So that is going to contain probably a Mark 1-3 command pod. And how are we going to do this? Okay, I'm just thinking about the actual structure of this right now. We're going to need an experiment container unit for sure. Although I'm probably not going to do the nose one like I've usually done in the past. We'd probably want like a Mark 25 parachute on here. and then a couple of drogue chutes. This would be for entering Duna. We can probably not rely entirely on these, because the Duna atmosphere is so thin, as I minimize the game accidentally. So we would get a couple of drogue chutes on here to help us slow down. But our primary goal would be to land this thing powered landing. Maybe we want to go a bit smaller than this. What is the actual size of the mobile processing lab? Nope, this is about the best we can do size-wise. Okay, so we need a mobile processing lab. Up here, we can put a Science Junior. And then have our parachute strapped on like this. Then we can put on a service bay down here. So our service bay is going to look, we need a 2.5 meter service bay, something like that. This is a very tall craft at this point. We're going to widen it out shortly. Okay, so that's fine. This is, of course, going to be our combined Duna lander. And we'll go ahead and save that. Okay. So this is what we're starting with. I'm going to move these radial chutes up here just for now. And we want to have a heat shield down here, most likely, to help us slow down on the approach. So that's all well and good. Now this needs a way of propulsion. And specifically, it needs to get off of the surface of Ike and into a terminal velocity while still having enough juice in the tank to land itself relatively safely. So we're going to have this, and this is going to be a monster craft, by the way. We're going to have this thing in radial mode. We're going to go to 4 coupling and do something kind of like this. I'm going to attach on some fuel tanks, and what size are we going for? Is this going to be 2.5 meter? This might be 2.5 meter. If we were to do that, it gets pretty big pretty quick and really, really heavy to lift. So this is going to be a very heavy lift launch vehicle at this point, right? We're already incredibly heavy. We might end up redesigning some of this, but I do want to have hemispherical liquid fuel tanks here. We'll go for these guys. And then I want to check what our Duna thrust to weight would be if we were running. I mean, I feel like a bunch of poodles on here would be overkill. Like, I feel like this would be massive overkill. What would that be in Delta V? 4381? Okay. And over Ike, this thrust to weight would be 9.34. That's doable on Ike. On Duna, it's actually doable as well. Okay, this seems like it would work. Then, we're going to need to drop this guy down a little bit, like so. We need landing legs on here. And we need probably quite a number of them, actually. So we're going to go into ground here, and we're going to grab the largest landing struts we have available. We're going to put in 2 here. I don't want to duplicate all of that. We're going to put in 2 here, giving us 8 landing legs for the time being. I'm going to do another one. No, don't duplicate that. Duplicate this. And I want to... I keep grabbing the wrong thing here. Okay, no. Stop it. Grab this. There we go. I'm going to assign that there, and then this guy is instead going to go here. Okay, now I want to move these guys all down a little bit anyway. And this is going to be what is going to be landing on Duna, although we will need some power here, for sure. So I'm going to plop some electricity, or rather some batteries in here. A 4K should be more than sufficient. And then we're going to have some power generation. Probably a pair of Gigantors would do the trick here. I don't love our offset here. Okay, let's grab these guys and reposition that. That's better. Cool. Then we would put in our Gigantors here. I just want 2. No, I just want 2. Thank you very much. There we go. Okay, so we put in our Gigantors there. We need some form of communications. There is an antenna in this command pod. We probably want more than that. So I would like, I think an RA2 is massively overkill for here. So that'll be fine. We're going to nestle a couple of comsats in these spaces here is going to be the idea. They're going to be very, very small, ideally. And we'll see where we actually manage to put them in. But I think just a simple high gain antenna out here would probably do the trick. Can that be retracted? I think we can retract that. We might be better off using something like a Communitron here, though. So something like this guy. So this would be what we would land on Duna. We would, of course, need to put in some struts. And we can already see this thing's pretty expensive. So we would put in some struts like this. That was not in symmetry mode. That's in symmetry mode. There we go. And then I'd probably also want to strut these together. These are actually never intended to be... These radial decouplers are actually never intended to be used. So we can do something like this to grant it a bunch of extra stability. And then connect this in down here. Like so. Okay. So that's the Duna portion. Do we have a decent way to steer? I believe, does this have a reaction wheel? It does. But I think that I want to have another big reaction wheel in here. Like that. That would be what we would land on Duna. Although we would need to put in our science experiments, of course. If we're moving the science experiments, that'll be fine. We are going to... we need to put... That included the deployable science, did it not? Deploy science experiments, creating an unkerbal outpost on Ike. Yes. Okay, so we're going to need some of that, but that can remain on Ike. So that'll be fine. We're going to need all of our science experiments in here. So we're going to put a magnetometer boom, a single magnetometer boom here. Keep in mind, this is a one-way trip. This is not intended to come back. We're going to put this in here. We're going to put in a... We have a Science Junior already. We'll put in a barometer. We'll put in a Mystery Goo containment unit. This is going to be a little bit on the empty side here, just because a lot of these are quite small, intended to fit into smaller craft. But we needed the science lab, so that'll be fine. We'll put in the negative gravioli detector. We could put in an experiment storage unit here, just in case we want one. Actually, we probably will want one. So we'll do that. We'll put in a seismic accelerometer. We should probably put a KER in here. We'll do that. We've got... Let's see, we put that in there already. Atmospheric spectrovariometer we'll put in up here. That'll do for now. And then a 2-hot thermometer. Something like that. That's basically a full complement of science. A lot of that is reusable and will be reused. Okay. And this will all be transmitted science. This is not coming back again. So we'll retract these landing struts. Something along the lines of that. Cool. And eventually, once we actually land, we might want to sit on the engines. Those seem to provide better traction than the landing struts, but that's fine if we need to do that. That's completely okay. Now we need to do the communication satellites and the Ike portion. So the Ike portion is mostly going to be a decoupler that goes down here. So this will be a TD25 decoupler. I guess a stack separator would do. And then I want to get a little bit of space here. We would put in like a modular girder segment there. And then the actual Ike lander would go down here. Now the Ike lander can land on these engines. But we are going to need to have it be relatively wide here. We can definitely land on these engines. I want to have it have... I'm just thinking here, do we want to have these be extendable down? Or do we want to just sit on the actual lander? That might be the way to go. Not have legs on the Ike portion here. Just have it be about this same width overall. And we definitely want to be able to refuel on Ike. We want this to be fully refueled after landing. So we're going to need to have an ore tank here. So we can have like a small holding tank here. And in fact, I think I'm going to use that instead of this modular girder segment as a spacer here. So something like this. Then we would want to expand this out a little bit with like a Convertitron 250. And then something to land on down here. This thing will be tall, no doubt about that. But hopefully at least the reaction wheel would be able to do that. I think I'm going to move these Gigantors up a little bit so that they're not... Oh, that didn't go into symmetry. I'm going to move them up a little bit here so that they are not causing us issues with clipping in here. So something along the lines of that. We are going to need to have some drill-o-matics on here. Of course, we can't attach those there. I'm going to go about this, I think, a little bit differently. Putting this here, putting the drill-o-matics down here. We should really only need about 2 of them. We're going to need the ability to get rid of some heat, and then we're going to need capacity for landing on this, right? This will need communications. And we can get the communications done quasi-easily with something along the lines of an RA-100. I mean, that's kind of big. This could really be an RA-2. This doesn't have to be super long range. It can connect into our comm satellites. So something like this, it will need power. Of course, once we take off, the Gigantors could do that. Once we take off, it won't need power, really. Just a small trickle of power. So we could have it have separate small photovoltaic panels, like 1x6s. Those would go on top over here, I think. So those would go about here. We'd put in the RA2 relay antenna down here. And then we would need our actual landing structure. Again, I'm planning on having these poodles be what we land with. We would need to have some payload here. And specifically, we'd need to have a service module here. SM-25 is way bigger than I want it to be. Like, way taller, specifically. How much can we fit in there? Basically nothing. Okay. What I really want it to be is, I think, not a service module. This is not what I'm thinking of. I want it to be in cargo. Here we go. SEQ 9? No. SEQ 24, though? Yes. So something like this, inside of that, we will, of course, need to have our deployable science. So that will include a communitron. That will include a Guab ED monitor, a Grand Slam passive seismometer. Not that we're going to get any of those. Actually, we should maybe we should have this be up here and include enough for both Duna and Ike. So then that would be 2 communitrons, 2 Guab ED monitors, 2 Grand Slam passive seismometers, 2 ionographers. Photovoltaic panels are something we're not too concerned about. Weather analyzers and experiment control stations. Then, how much power are we going to need for all of this? Well, we've got plenty of space. We can just max out the rest of this with photovoltaic panels, and that would be fine, power-wise. So this would be for setting up 2 different outposts, like that. Then we need to land. So for that, I'm going to put in a cubic octagonal strut here. Actually, I'm going to go a little bigger than that. I'm going to put in a modular girder segment. Then we're going to duplicate that and go into 4x symmetry and put in modular girder segments like this. And of course, we have to land, right? And we have to be relatively stable when we land. So I'm going to have this be somewhat wide here. Then we're going to take it out and have it be, if I can rotate it the way I want it to be, this. That's not becoming a good shape. So the idea here, well, actually it's fine, because we're not going to leave it like this. So we're going to put another one here. Let's not have it be that shape. Thank you very much. Cool. That's a little bit better. So the idea here was always to do this, despite the shape. And the idea is that we put in the ground landing struts. We put those in here. And here, although we'll need to rotate that. And then we do another pair not like this. We do another pair here. Actually, maybe like, yeah, here is fine. And we grab this again and put it in here, like that. And then we land on that. We would need to make this be a little bit more stable, for sure. So we would get a connection up like this, and then a connection up like this for struts. We would probably also want a connection from here into here, just to make that be hopefully relatively stable. Then I would also want to connect these together like so. Lifting this is going to be really interesting. Really, really interesting. But that should be relatively stable. So this would be what we would leave on Ike. Our mining equipment stays here. We'll need cooling equipment on here. I just realized. We'll need some thermal control systems. I think thermal control systems could potentially fit on... We could certainly have one here to help cool. And then we would have thermal control systems that are intended for this. Those would be like large thermal control systems, or maybe not. Maybe they'd be like medium thermal control systems. And they would be located here. Is that enough heat sinking? Is a question we need to ask. So we should probably put this on the surface in a simulation and find out if this is enough heat sinking. I'm guessing it's not going to be for this. Although we could potentially cram in thermal control systems instead out here. Although I'd want to do it in two coupling. So probably just something like this. Or potentially... Now get out of there. Potentially put them in here and here. Like that. Okay, let's put this on the surface and see how it goes. So we're going to just save this and launch it. Of course, we have not built the launcher for it. We've not built the comsats for it. I just want to make sure that what we've got thus far is actually going to be functional. It might tip over. It's probably a pretty high center of gravity because of the fuel tanks, I would think. I'm hoping that we're wide enough on the ground that that doesn't matter. So let's put this into orbit over Ike real quick. I want to put it in a very low orbit over Ike, and we're going to try a landing on Ike. So what orbit do we want this to be? I'm going to put it at a like minimum orbit. I just put in things at random there. It'll put it to the minimum safe value. Okay, so we'll set orbit there. And let's see what we've got here. We're going to try a quick landing. So just surface retrograde here. I don't care about science. That is irrelevant. We're going to... Oh, this is going to be tedious. I really should set up... Oh, these are set up like that. Okay, that's fine. That's not going to be too bad then. So we'll get all of these extended out. And we should do this. Okay. So we're going to slow this right on down. And we'll bring this on in. Beautiful. That's looking good. We need to kill our horizontal velocity. And I'm actually going to, for this, turn on Smart ASS. We have access to that at this point. So I'm going to do horizontal velocity minus. And we're just going to kill our horizontal velocity and not our vertical velocity. Actually, we probably can transition at this point tech-wise into using Smart ASS. At least if we have a flight computer, which we do here. So I think this is perfectly fine to use at this point. So we're at about 3 meters per second, half a meter per second. That's good enough horizontally. Okay, surface velocity minus, and we're going to physics warp away. Power is a potential concern. We're on the dark side here. And what is this going to look like? We've got plenty of power right now. We extend this guy on out. And extend this guy on out. We should also extend these two solar panels. They're much, much smaller, but they'll still be somewhat helpful. And we're keeping an eye on our countdown here. We've got the thrust to weight. The question is, how tippy is it, and how does the landing go? I just realized that these are going to be poking directly through these. I wonder if that'll work. It'll probably be fine. Probably. But this is just a simulation here to see how this portion will work. Okay, we're about 10 seconds away from our burn here. 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. Commencing burn. And we are decelerating. We're definitely coming down more quickly than I would in a real situation, but that's fine. It looks like we are overshooting this estimation a little bit, so we can let this fall for a little bit further here. And at least in this position, this looks reasonably fine. I would definitely not be coming down quite like this in reality if this wasn't a simulation. Oh, we're going back up. Stop it. Stop it. Okay. Cool. Let's just bring this down very, very gently from here. It'll be fine. Okay. How... Okay, we blew up a little bit over here. Right, I want to be on kill rot. It looks like we're relatively stable, even at a decent angle here. Would we remain so if we ran out of power? Actually, yeah, we're quite stable. Surprisingly so. Okay, let's deploy our drill here and see if it works through these. That's a little bit awkward for sure. And we should also extend our radiators here. The other question was, is this enough cooling? And we can see we don't currently have any data, but that's because we don't have our comsats here. So that's fine. We start our surface harvesters. And we're watching that core temperature. Core temp looks good here. Looks good here. Okay. And we start our ISRU, liquid fuel plus oxidizer. Core temp is good. Core temp is good. So our refueling system here would work absolutely fine. As far as getting these parts out of here and down to the ground goes, that's kind of a different story. I'm not sure exactly how we do that. We would normally have a Kerbal be standing here and then one standing here on the ground, right? And then that would be fine. We could potentially have like a shelf here where we have like a Kerbal standing here that hands it down to one standing here who hands it down to one on the ground. That's a theoretical possibility. I'm sure we can figure something out. Yeah, a Kerbal potentially like on this ladder, handing it down to someone down here. Let's see if that would work. Let's have Bob EVA here. Because, I mean, as long as we're here, we do need to figure some of this stuff out, right? So let's have Bob EVA. We're going to have Bob head down for now to the ground. So Bob is just going to park out over this direction, and we'll see what this is looking like. And then I do see the time here. This is taking a while for sure. But we'll design the 2 comsats. I plan to have 2. We're going to design the 2 comsats and the actual lifter for this next episode. Yeah, breaking this is kind of irrelevant, but we'll have to make sure that we don't do that in the future. Oh, this guy is slightly bugged. We've had this happen before. Yep. We've had this happen before. Unfortunate, but the way to fix that is to reload him. That sounds like a lot of work. Maybe we can reset it by having him go onto the ladder, and that might reset his grounded state. So we can push down like this with his EVA pack. And then grab. And then let go. Yeah, that resets it. Cool. So the idea behind Bill here is that he goes down onto this ladder. And he goes down as far as he can here, which is about here. And then hands it to someone who is here. And that someone would, at this point, need to be Jeb. Of course, this is all simulated at this point. We are just in testing. So having this be here is maybe a bit awkward. We might want to move that. But as a question, if we were to land here, we cannot reach Jeb from here. Okay, if we were to climb down a bit, we can't quite reach Jeb. Okay, so Jeb might have to step forward here and climb on top of the drill. How's that? Actually, we still can't reach him. Okay. Noted. So we're going to have to move this. So let's revert that back to the vehicle assembly, and we've discovered a couple of issues, but mostly this is working better than anticipated. Excellent. So, step one here. We are going to move this guy to be down here. That'll be much easier to access. And we should also probably include a ladder here. So we'll do that. We'll include an extendable ladder right here. Maybe a little bit higher up than that. Like, right here. Yes, that looks good. So an extendable ladder there so that we can park here and hand it down to a Kerbal who's down here. That should be a workable solution there. Now, as far as this goes, I definitely do want to move our Gigantors to not be exactly in the middle of the world. We'll put them over here instead so that we don't have to worry about that. Okay, cool. So this will work for when we arrive on Ike. The real question is, how are we going to lift it, and where are we going to put those two communication satellites? I'm actually leaning towards including those down here. We'll see. That is a job for next episode. This is quite a design process, but I expect that we will be done with it next episode. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, James, Shadow Wolf, Lohan80, Rogue Corvid, Kentogan, Andy Magar, Spartan News, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Soccerman12 UK, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.